The U.S. government labels the People's Republic of China, or PRC, as one of its greatest challenges, even more so now as Beijing flexes its military prowess with an unprecedented buildup. The U.S. military command responsible for China, North Korea, the entire Pacific, and all the way to the border with India is known as the Indo-Pacific Command. Nick Schifrin traveled to Hawaii to meet its commander.
I never articulate the threat as a single nation.
Admiral John Aquilino is based in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and his command covers half the world's population.
We're about a stone's throw from Pearl Harbor. Are you concerned that we're at the most dangerous point since World War II?
I do see the current strategic environment as really dangerous, the most dangerous time I've seen in 38 years. This is based on, A, the largest military buildup that we're seeing in history, both conventional and nuclear. Number two, the unprovoked, illegitimate war in the Ukraine. 63 missile launches out of the DPRK, unprecedented, the most in history, to include a potential nuclear capability and a desire to have nuclear capability. And then you add one additional piece, and that is a no-limits policy articulated by the leaders of Russia and the PRC.
No limits cooperation.
No limits to their cooperation. That's concerning. That's a different world. This is about two incompatible visions for the future, right? Free and open and a legacy of liberty, or you look at an authoritarian, closed, opaque, and a tradition of tyranny. That's the choices that nations might have to make in the future.
Chinese fishing boats, warships, and aircraft regularly harass other countries in the region. How do you think you're already competing with China?
I think what you articulated is behavior that we see often. The inability to operate in accordance with the rule-based order. The coercion of allies, partners, and friends that are in the region. Economic, militarily, and then to your point, whether it be fishing vessels or other capabilities, right? These behaviors destabilize the region.
Xi Jinping has never renounced using violence to unify with Taiwan. And he specifically said by 2027, when the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, turns 100, that it will have, quote, enhanced capacity to safeguard China's interest. Do you believe that by 2027, China will have the capacity to invade Taiwan if it wants?
President Xi Jinping has tasked his military department to deliver the capabilities that he might need should he decide to take a choice of force by 2027. He's said it in open space. So I believe that they will execute the orders of their president.
Secretary Blinken put it this way. He said, Beijing has plans to pursue unification on a much faster timeline. Again, does that give you a sense of urgency?
We have a sense of urgency in everything we do. And we do that because of those actions that we see executed in the region. We see concern from the failure to adhere to agreements that applies to Hong Kong. We certainly have concern based on lethal actions on the line of actual control with India. We have to have a sense of urgency in order to deter any follow-on actions. And oh, by the way, we at Indo-PACOM need to move faster. We, the U.S. government, need to move faster.
In response to Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in August, we saw Chinese missiles fly over the island for the first time, bracketing the island, and we saw the Chinese Navy operate on the eastern side of Taiwan. China at the time said it was creating a new status quo, or wanted to create a new status quo. Do you think it has?
I think the intent for the PRC is to always move forward in a way that would help them achieve their end state of unification of Taiwan. That is certainly their strategic objective. What I would say is our actions and efforts will continue to ensure that we can meet responsibilities under the Taiwan Relations Act in order to enable any peaceful resolution as agreed to by people on both sides of the straits, free of coercion and force, right? The critical portion of this is the free of coercion and force. And what I think we saw was the threat of force and coercion.
The 1979 Taiwan Relations Act mandates the U.S. government provide Taiwan weapons to maintain a, quote, sufficient self-defense capability. The act is ambiguous about how the U.S. would respond to a Chinese invasion, but President Biden has reduced that ambiguity.
President Biden has said on multiple occasions that the United States would come to Taiwan's defense. Are you ready today to come to Taiwan's defense?
The United States military force in the Pacific is ready for all contingencies.
Do you think you will be more or less ready to respond in 5 or 10 years, given the steps you're taking, but also the steps that Beijing is taking?
Nick, we'll be ready. We will be ready. There's no caveat or more or less. You're either ready or you're not. And in the future, the United States will be ready.
Including on Taiwan?
The United States will be ready for any contingency that the military is told to execute.
Do you think Taiwan is taking the steps it needs to defend itself?
In the wake of this illegitimate and illegal war that the Russians have waged on Ukraine, I think what it did is it highlighted to people around the world that the potential exists for, action by adversaries, especially when you talk about authoritarian governments, that one person can decide whether to invade or not. So what I believe is that the people on Taiwan have seen that. I think they should learn from that and take the actions that are going to be required to defend themselves.
What lessons do you think that Taiwan should take from Ukraine?
What I tell you is what I learned, and that is the actions and responsibilities under the Taiwan Relations Act. We probably need to go a little faster.
What does that mean?
That certainly means that the capabilities and the training that are required to defend the island, we should certainly ensure they are received. So the Defense Industrial Base should be able to deliver those capabilities that the Taiwans have purchased.
American weapons bought by Taiwan, including artillery and Stinger missiles, have been delayed because of U.S. production limits. The U.S. is pushing Taiwan to purchase smaller weapons that could help repel a Chinese invasion, instead of big-ticket systems that Taiwan used to prefer.
China has increased its nuclear capacity, and according to the Department of Defense, it will yield about 1,500 nuclear weapons by 2030. How does that make what you do militarily more difficult?
What's going on in the PRC to accelerate and deliver that capability and capacity in the time that you just articulated, that's a nuclear buildup. And all the nations are concerned about it, as they should be.
What we've got behind us is the B-2.
A few minutes from Aquilino's office, he shows me a visiting B-2 bomber and the U.S.'s most advanced fighter jets. Aquilino wants to have a dialogue with his Chinese counterpart, but he won't pick up the phone.
It's very important for me to be able to have communications with my counterpart. If there were ever an event for he and I to be able to talk and potentially de-escalate and keep anything from turning into a real problem, that's certainly beneficial. I've been working towards having that event now for almost a year and a half. We have yet to be able to schedule it. It was never scheduled, so it was never cut off.
But you've been trying to schedule it and they haven't replied.
We haven't been able to set it up. They haven't accepted the request yet.
This year, China's neighbor, North Korea, officially called the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK, has launched an unprecedented number of tests. It says it has nuclear weapons that can reach the continental U.S.
So it certainly destabilizes and threatens not only the United States, but our allies and partners when you think about South Korea and Japan. That capability, either conventional or nuclear, is concerning. Now, that said, the United States, South Korea, and Japan have come together to both operate together, to do trilateral response options, to ensure all of our homelands are protected, and to deter any future actions. So it's concerning that the provocative action by the DPRK continues and no sign of slowing down.
Admiral Aquilino, thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.